God bless America, and that I love, stand beside her and guide her through the night with the light from above, from the mountains to the prairies, to the oceans, wide with foam. God bless America, my home sweet home. God bless America, my home sweet home.
Good evening and welcome to Yom HaShoah, hosted by Cypress College. My name is Howard Kummerman and I'm the Executive Director of the Cypress College Foundation. Like many events, we plan for Yom HaShoah to be live and in person at the Cypress College Theater. We are very pleased, however, to be able to offer the event in this virtual format. We're also fortunate to have with us 4 Holocaust survivors and a World War II U.S. Army veteran who liberated a Nazi concentration camp. Cypress College Yom HaShoah founder Cliff Lester will later provide greater details as he interviews our panelists. At the end of the program, we will light a candle in memory of all those who were lost during the Holocaust. At that time, we invite you to light your own candle. And if you are able, please take a picture of your candle lighting and post it on our Cypress College Foundation Facebook page or any of the Cypress College social media sites. This is not a fundraising event, and yet, if you feel so compelled, please consider a gift to the Cypress College Foundation Holocaust Education Fund. The fund provides scholarships and the ability for us to continue Yom HaShoah each year. You may go to www.cypresscollegefoundation.org to make your gift. Now it's my pleasure to introduce a video by Cypress College history professor David Halachmi, one of those instrumental in coordinating Yom HaShoah each year.
Good evening, everyone. My name is David Halachmi. I'm the chair of the history department at Cypress College, and it's an honor to welcome all of you to our 5th annual Yom HaShoah. There were 6 million Jews who were murdered during the Holocaust. 50 million people died during World War II. And as the generation that went through this event passes, we are starting to forget the stories of World War II. If you were 20 years old when World War II began, you're now in your late 90s. And now more than ever, we need to retell this story, especially to the younger generation. And for those of you who are younger, under 20, 25 years of age, I want you to realize you are the last generation to hear directly from these survivors. Your children will not have this opportunity. So what you hear tonight, I really do hope that you pass on to your friends, to your family, and most importantly, one day to your children, because their stories can never be forgotten. We started to plan this event several months ago, and of course, everything changed. And it was actually our professor, who's now retired, Clifford Lester, professor of photography, who is the man most responsible for organizing this event from the beginning. He takes amazing photographs of all these Holocaust survivors, and he's brought them to Cypress College, and he was really determined to move forward even this year with all of what is going on around us. And we're very glad that we did decide to move forward. So tonight, I am introducing this event to you from my kitchen, and later on you will hear from our 105-year-old World War II veteran, Holocaust survivors, and you will be able to hear directly from them. And while this is not what any of us envisioned when we started to plan this event, it does very much exemplify the stories of the survivors, and really also the story of the Jewish people, because the story of the survivors and the story of the Jewish people is that of perseverance. A few weeks ago was Passover, and Jewish families around the globe still found a way to retell the story of the Exodus that happened thousands of years ago. Jewish families held Zoom seders across state lines, across continents even. There were Jewish people who cobbled together whatever they needed to do for prayers. And in Israel, an entire nation at 8:30 p.m. opened up its windows, went out to their balconies, and together sang Ma'ashtana, very important Jewish song blessing during the Passover Seder. So we could use this event tonight as inspiration, that even during the darkest times, even during great hardships, people can find light, people can find hope. If we know and realize what people went through of that generation, these survivors, if you know the unspeakable horrors that happened, from children being experimented on like animals, to elderly men being put in cages and given 100 calories of food a day to see if they would die and how long it would take them to die on 100 calories of food a day. And for that generation to go through that and still find a positive purpose in life all these years later, that could be inspirational to all of us today. So that is one of the great lessons we can learn from the survivors. There's also another vital lesson we can learn from the Holocaust, and that is how fragile our freedoms really are, and how easily freedom and liberty can be taken away from us. From the communist gulags to the death camps of the Nazis, they all began with the death of liberty. And when liberty dies, people die. And that is one lesson we should never forget and always be vigilant about, especially in times of crisis in any society. So I really hope you get a lot out of this evening tonight, that you find yourself inspired, and God willing, next year we'll be able to do this again in our campus theater. And for those of you who are watching tonight, I really hope maybe next year you come and you meet these survivors in person. In all the years we have done this, I've had the amazing opportunity to meet many survivors, and just meeting them and seeing how grateful and happy they are, it is just a life-moving experience. So I hope next year you'll join us, and for tonight, I hope you really find these words of these survivors and our World War II vet motivational. I thank you all very much for tuning in, and our community thanks you for being part of this. God bless and good night.
Good evening. My name is Clifford Lester. I'm a photographer, retired photography professor from Cypress College, and the son of 2 Holocaust survivors. Over the past 16 years, my mother's passing, since her passing, to honor her memory, I have been documenting survivors, creating their portraits, which grace the halls of the Cypress College Holocaust Memorial Gallery, and sharing their stories. After the Nazis had come for my mother on a number of occasions, my mom, Ursula Lowenbach Foster, survived the war by going into hiding with her parents and 13 others in a true 2-foot crawl space underneath a home owned by Dutch righteous Gentiles. These courageous people risked their lives to save the lives of others. Early one morning, when the house guests were still sleeping upstairs, the Nazis pounded on the door of the home, and everyone had to hurriedly get into their hiding place. The Nazis accused the homeowners of hiding Jews, but the lady of the house gestured to Hitler's portrait on the wall, saying they would never hide dirty Jews. Not once to take her word, the Nazis frantically searched everywhere, yet fortunately, hiding below, my mom and the others were not discovered. I can't even imagine the terror she experienced as a young girl. My mom lived to tell her story, whereas my brother, my Uncle Ernst, did not. He was tragically murdered in Auschwitz only weeks after he had to report to the SS in 1943. Like the words of many survivors, the message she would share with the countless students she spoke to while alive echoes the ones we will hear tonight, that hatred and intolerance lead to genocide. She would do what she could to emphasize the importance of embracing diversity and accepting one another. This Yom HaShoah evening, I have the enormous honor to interview a few of the incredible group of survivors I have previously photographed, and a World War II veteran, all who have endured hardships that words can't begin to describe. You will hear stories of courage, faith, and the unbelievable desire to survive. Furthermore, you will witness testimony of the Holocaust that will become our obligation to pass on to future generations. To survivors, Sarah Schweitz, Dr. Jacob Eisenbach, Joe Alexander, Piri Katz, and to Lieutenant Colonel Sam Sachs, I am so grateful to have you here with us this evening. Due to the limited time that we have, I will now ask each of our guests a selection of questions that I have prepared, and we will start now with Lieutenant Colonel Sam Sachs. Good evening, Sam. Good evening, Sam. I'm not hearing you. I think Sam is muted. Sam, are you there?
Can you hear me now?
Now I hear you. Wonderful.
Great.
Wonderful.
Good.
Thank you. That's our technology, always a challenge. Sam, my first question for you is, what led you to becoming an Army soldier?
This was as a high school senior when I graduated. I had two wishes. Number one, to become an educated person. We lived in a town, Grand Forks, North Dakota, right outside of the University of North Dakota, which was the university I was going to attend. And also for a reason I can't explain to you, except I probably had a premonition what was coming. I wanted to be an officer in the U.S. Army. And in order to do that, I had to join the ROTC, and I figured that I would have a better chance if I enlisted in the North Dakota National Guard, which I did. And I stayed in the Guard up until the time I was inducted into the ROTC. And I might put, as an aside, during the summer training camp while I was in the Guard, as an honor to the incoming president, I actually saw President Roosevelt.
Wow.
As he was making a tour of the country. He was elected 4 times, you know, and because of that 4-time election, it was term limits were installed, and where he's now, where a president could only serve 2 terms. But I did see President Roosevelt at that time as he made his tour of the country. And so I did join the ROTC. I graduated college and got my diploma in business administration, and stayed in the reserves. And I was inducted, called active duty, Fort Benning, on October 1st, 1941. War was declared by President Roosevelt on December 8th, 1941. So I think I often ask myself, why did I follow this route? But I believe I had a premonition, and the guardian angel has been with me the rest of my life. No question about it.
Absolutely. Speaking of the guardian angel, Sam, I know you shared with me this story, but I'd like you to share it with everyone and tell us a bit about the flight you took on the plane you called the Flying Coffin, as you flew
yes,
from England to Normandy, France.
correct. That's correct. We were part of the 82nd Airborne 325th Glider Infantry. The gliders have no motors. They were pulled by an airplane, and we had no communication whatsoever between the airplane and the glider. The glider pilot could disengage himself from the airplane by pushing a lever anywhere he pleased, and the pilot of the airplane could do likewise. And so that was part of the danger of it. And the glider itself looked like a coffin. If you cut the wings off, why, you could and paint the fuselage brown or black, it did look like a coffin because there was a hump in front. Now, when we came to the airfield in which we did the training, I was the liaison officer between the Air Corps, which then was a part of the Army, and the liaison officer between the glider troops and the Air Corps. As a liaison officer between, this was about a week to 10 days before we took off to liberate the continent, we took pictures of landing sites, and it was my job to pick out landing sites for the glider troops, where they would land. And the Air Corps had a little biplane, a very small plane with a camera attached to the wings, and they would take pictures of the area, intended landing areas, and they would then be converted into clay models. And we then briefed the non-commissioned officers and the officers on their intended landing sites. On the day of takeoff, we had, in my particular glider, I was not ever going to be taken as a prisoner of war. Besides myself, we had machine guns, ammunition, and 8 men were there. And I told them they didn't have to follow me. I would be happy to transfer them to another glider if they would so wish. But these men were so devoted to me, they would follow me into the valley of death. Really, we were ready to commit whatever had to be done to avoid being taken prisoners of war. And if we had to fight our way, we knew that if we had to fight our way at the Nazis' way, we were certainly outnumbered. But that was a chance we took. As we took off, we flew over the channel. It was a beautiful day, a very, very nice day. And I remember looking out of the window of the glider and saying, dear God, do we have to start a war on such a beautiful day? But anyway, down below, I saw all the ships disgorging men onto the shores of Normandy. And we landed at Utah Beach, and the American troops that had the soldiers in the ships landed at Omaha Beach. Many of them drowned because they had to land behind the shoreline, since the Germans had erected metal barricades about 4 feet high, connected by barbed wire. So they had to land in 5, 6, 7 feet of water. And they had 2 days of rations, water, and their guns and all the equipment necessary to carry on a war, because they could not be supplied for at least 2 to 3 days should we be successful. And success was not an assured thing at all. In the air, the sky was full of gliders and airplanes pulling them. It looked like snow falling from the skies. And also we had fighter planes protecting us in case the Germans came through. Am I talking too long on this one thing?
Well, you're doing great, but I'm going to have you go to the next question.
Okay, good.
I know that after you landed down the road a little ways, towards the end of the war, or it was the end of the war, you walked into a concentration camp.
That's correct.
Can you share with us what your experience was like?
What my experience was, right. The concentration camp was just inside of Germany, German border, as we crossed from France into Germany. And when we went in there, the first thing that struck me was a latrine type of installation where people did their duty, the urination and so on, stacked alongside. It looked like cords of wood, but they were human bones that were so the sun had gotten to them, and I don't know how long they'd been there, right out in the open. But all they were bones at that time. I would say 8 to 10 feet high, maybe 5 feet wide, just stacked like wood. And there were barrack type things, wooden barracks there with straw for a mattress. There's nothing but straw. And I think the people were fed just the slop that the Germans were, instead of throwing it out, they threw it at them. And I saw children, teenage boys, whose skin was so weazened that they looked like men of 90 or 100 years old. And they were running around. They couldn't believe, they thought it was a trick that the Germans were playing on them because they were just running around in circles and didn't know what to do. And many of the people had already left. Where they went, I have no idea. And the stench of human flesh, rotting human flesh, is overpowering. And it's a scene I'll just never forget.
Thank you so much, Sam. Your service to this country and to the survivors is beyond words, and we're so grateful to have you with us tonight. And congratulations again on your 105th birthday.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Now we're gonna move on to Dr. Jacob Eisenbach.
This is
Dr. Eisenbach, can you hear me?
Can hear you, Clifford, yes.
Clifford, wonderful. So Dr. Eisenbach, my first question for you is, early in the war, after the Nazis invaded Poland, a wall was built around your family's neighborhood in, I'm going to pronounce it Lodz, I'm not sure if that's right.
That's correct.
Good, turning the area into literally a Jewish ghetto. Can you describe how this suddenly changed your life from a wonderful childhood into a literal nightmare?
I was very fortunate in my childhood to grow up in a wonderful family. My two parents, and there were 4 of us children, plus an extended family of about 100 people. My parents adored each other and they adored their children. We had a wonderful life. My father was a textile manufacturer in the city of Lodz, not a big manufacturer. He employed about 30 people, but he did very well. And every summer we would move to a resort place and spend the whole summer there. My mother, when I speak of her, I like to say that she was not human. She was an angel in a human body. She would gather her 4 children, put her arms around us, and bless us by saying, "You are my greatest possession." She died a year before the war, so she never went through the Holocaust. And she never knew what that blessing has done for us. No matter what Hitler said or did to us, he could not destroy those feelings that we are loved and our lives are important. When the war broke out on September 1st, 1939, within a few days, they started building that wrought iron fence around the old part of the city. And that was to be the ghetto of Lodz, which Lodz had about 700,000 in population, and half of those people were Jews. And we lived before the war, we lived in a Jewish city. We had our own Jewish schools, Jewish newspapers, Jewish theaters, Jewish neighborhood grocery stores, butchers, bakers, friends, all Jewish, were associated with a lot of Jewish people. And we had a great life. And once the Nazis came in, they ordered all the Jews to move into that ghetto. And they issued an order that the ghetto will be locked hermetically on May 1st, 1940, which was just a few months after they occupied the city of Lodz. And any Jew found outside the ghetto after May 1st, 1940, would be shot to death on the spot. Many of the Jews from Lodz escaped to the Russian part of Poland. Hitler signed a non-aggression pact with Poland a week before the war broke out. So they decided to divide Poland and not to interfere with each other's activities. And many of the Jews from Lodz escaped to the Russian part of Poland. And among those people who escaped was my oldest sister, Fela. She was 18, just finished high school. She and a few of her girlfriends escaped to the Russian part of Poland and settled in the city of Lwów, LWOW.
Dr. Eisenbach,
yes.
let me go on because I'm sorry the time is short. There's a lot more questions I want to ask you.
Yes.
In the book you have written called Where You Go, I Go, I know that these words came from your brother as you both were required to board a Nazi death train.
Yes.
Can you relate some details about that time in your life and what it meant to hear those words from your brother?
Yes. We had a family of over 100 people, and most of them were already shipped out to the gas chambers. And it was only Sam and me that was still left alive. My youngest brother, Henry, was taken to the gas chambers at the age of 11. And I received an order to report for deportation. That was a death sentence. I did not report. I went into hiding. And my younger brother, Sam, he was 2 years younger, he was with me, and he was in hiding with me. He didn't get the order to report. He didn't have to go. We already knew what the Nazis were doing to the Jews. From the Polish train conductors, we found out that they take people by train loads, 7,000 to 8,000 people per train, to the cities like Auschwitz, Treblinka, and Majdanek, and no one ever came out alive, and they could smell burning flesh in the air. So we knew what the Nazis were doing. And for that reason, I did not report for deportation. And we went into hiding. But the police caught up with me after a month of hiding. And Sam didn't have to go. But he could have said, Jack, I know where you're going, but I'm not going with you. I'm staying right here. But this is not what he said. What he did say is, Jack, our whole family is now gone. We are the only two that are still left out of a people of 100. And we know where all they went, and I know where you are going. But I'm not staying here by myself. I'm going with you. Wherever you go, I go. And whatever happens to you will happen to me. That's what Sam said, knowing full well that he's going with me to Auschwitz, to the gas chambers. And he didn't have to go. That's the kind of a family relationship we had. And the title of my book is Sam's Words, Where You Go, I Go. That's the story behind the title.
Thank you, Dr. Eisenbach. You know, I know you. I've known you for a long time. You're such a positive soul, such a positive spirit. You've witnessed so many horrible atrocities, including the death of your family members and close friends. Yet, when I photographed you, you stated very clearly to never lose hope for a brighter tomorrow. How do you manage to hang on to those words despite the many tragic things you've witnessed in your life?
Ever since I was 5 years old, I like to sit in and listen to adult conversations. Our household always had company, friends, relatives, and I learned a lot of important lessons that served me well throughout my lifetime by listening to adult conversations. But if I have to pick up one lesson that I have learned that really stands out, and that is that no matter how dark the clouds may be, there will always be a day when the sun will break through. Translated, it means no matter how bad the situation you are in, never lose hope for a better day. And that idea was in my mind when I was starving and close to death. I never knew if I would be alive the next day, but I was always hoping for that better day when the sun breaks through.
Dr. Eisenbach, you're incredible. God bless you. I wish we had more time to talk to you, but we need to move on. Thank you so much. Those, I was going to ask you what message you want to pass on, but that is such a powerful message. I think that's a great place to stop. Thank you so much for being with us, and God bless you.
Thank you very much, Clifford. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you so much. And now we're going to move on to Sarah Schweitz. Sarah, I'm just waiting to see that your microphone is unmuted there. There we go.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we got you, Sarah. Sarah, my first question for you is you were a young girl during the war. You were born in a town called Trikala, Greece. I'd like to know what recollections you learned from your family about what happened during that time of the war.
Yes, it is not exactly my family. Those recollections are mine, and they're as vivid today as they were then, because I was a participant during the war. I was not a, my parents allowed me to be in every family meeting, and whether it was good or bad. So I was very well informed. The recollections that I have is that the Germans occupy our home, and my childhood home was right next to the temple. And we had a bomb shelter in the backyard. And my mother said that when you hear the sirens, whether you're Jew or Gentile, you are welcome to come to the bomb shelter and save yourself. So it was never room for my mother and I, because my father was working, to go to the bomb shelter. So we always ended up in the bomb shelter of the Commercial Bank of Greece. It was a beautiful building, was right next to our home. And it just so happens when there was a German raid and the airplanes came, they wanted to eliminate, the temple was right next door to us. They wanted to throw the bomb into the temple. But the bomb, instead of going into the temple, went into our backyard. Atop on the bomb shelter were 30 Greek citizens were hiding, and there was no room for my mother and I. My father was in the bank. So we survived that. And our backyard was converted into a cemetery. There were candles. I remember those candles. I remember the crying, the wailing. It was just terrible. That I remember very well. And that was right in our backyard.
Wow. Wow. Sarah, there was a time that you shared with me that your father was captured and taken to a concentration camp. and later released. But there was a story about him having a picture of you in his wallet.
Yeah.
Could you share
Yes.
with us how that was instrumental in his release?
Yes. Before they released them, he was in a concentration camp with Jewish people, with intellectuals, with Greeks, with desirables, and they were sorting them out. Who will go to Auschwitz and who will remain in Greece? So my father looked very Aryan. He had blue eyes and blonde hair and fair skin. He was very friendly. So he went in front of the commandant, and he asked him a few questions, and he said, "You better be truthful your answers because we already know the answers." He had a file this big, and he says, "We already know the answers." So he said to him, "Why do you want to leave? Do you have a family? Are you married?" My father says, "Yes, I have a little girl." And he said, "Do you have a picture of your little girl?" And my dad took out a picture, and he said, "This is my little girl. I was, I had blue eyes and blonde hair. My hair was very light." And the German was looking and looking, and he says, "Oh my God, I will let you go because this little girl looks so much like mine. Today is my daughter's birthday, and I will let you go to your daughter." And that's how he survived.
Wow, that's incredible. Sarah, there was a time, I think at 4:30 in the morning, that you learned the Germans were coming, and did you have to leave town at that time?
Yes, the Germans occupied our home. We had to go for a while and stay at the grandfather's house down in the basement. There were about 15 people there, and you couldn't even breathe. So one of our Greek friends said, "It is too crowded here. You have to come to my house." He was a wealthy merchant. We have an extra bedroom, and so we went there, but the Germans had a list of all the Jewish people, and they went to our house. They couldn't find us, and they were looking and looking and asking and asking. And somehow, that in Greece at that time, we did not have a telephone in the house. But this wealthy Christian had a telephone in his house. So early in the morning, they called up and they said, "You better go, and because they're really looking for you." And there were a lot of informants for a loaf of bread or something. They will tell you where a Jewish person or a family was staying. So that was at 4:30 in the morning. And our journey started at that time. It was in March 24, 1944. It was very cold. And we left with the help of another righteous Gentile. We wrote to Yad Vashem, and all of these names of the righteous Gentiles are there, memorialized for eternity. And we're very grateful for those Greeks who opened their hearts and their homes to have us there for a night or so. And the reason for that is because my father was working for the Agrarian Bank of Greece, and everybody knew him by name. So wherever we went up in the mountains, and my father said, I'm Abraham Baruch, and this is my wife and daughter. Could you please put us up for a night? They were always welcomed us there. And This is what made life a little easier.
So thankful.
I'm very thankful. And whenever I speak, whether it is adults or children, I told them that it is very important to be kind to your fellow person, man or woman. There's a Greek proverb that says, "Do a good deed and throw it to the waves. When the tide comes in, you're going to be rewarded." And this is what happened. Don't expect a reward right away, but eventually you will be rewarded. So I think those words are very profound for me.
That's perfect, Sarah. That's, I think, a good way to end. Thank you so much for sharing with us. God bless you.
Thank you.
It's great to see you again, and we're going to move on now to Piri Katz. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Beautiful. Hi, Piri.
Hello.
Hi. How are you?
I'm okay, thank you.
Good, good. So I'd like for you to share with us what were the first signs that the war had started, and how did that affect your life and your family's life when the war first got started?
Actually,
Your cousins from Poland?
yeah, well, I had cousins in Poland, and they came because they took over Poland first. So the cousins came, and they were hiding in our barn upstairs so they wouldn't get killed. Because they killed my aunt and everybody else in Poland. That's how we found out about the trouble.
So how did you
Yeah.
How did you like
Piri,
it?
we might need you to talk just a little bit louder and maybe move a little closer to the camera.
There you go.
There we go.
Speak louder.
Okay.
So-
So Piri, the next question is at one point you were sent to Auschwitz, and I know this is going to be a tough question for you, but can you share with us a bit about that horrible experience on the train as you were being transported there?
What was it like on the train being transported to Auschwitz?
Oh, well, actually, when they took us in the train was just so jammed with all the people. We couldn't sit, but everybody was standing up. It was horrible. And, you know, there was nothing, no water, no nothing. We're almost, you know, eating our pants. But then when we came to Auschwitz, as soon as we get out of the Auschwitz, and then the Nazis, the female and male, they would just go, you go this way, you go that way, you go this way, you go that way. So they took away my parents one way, and I had two married sisters with kids. They told them to go, you know, different way. That's how we were all separated. I come from 11 children, so we're all kind of separated so many ways.
Hmm.
And then also you were saying that at the camps when they had little babies and Nazis were throwing children up in the air with a bayonet, they were skewering them, and people were immediately, mom was taken with her younger sister. Her sister Scheindel got separated. Her sister Ruchel and her friend Piri and cousin Lily, and also she had another Lily from Jalak, and also her Ruchel of the Jikaba. They were all together, the five of them. But my mom was wearing pearls. She was wearing earrings, and everything got ripped off of her. And they shaved their heads. People were being beaten. People were being shot. People were being starved. People were being killed. And so she was immediately given a gown with her number. Your number was
a striped dress was 20,444. So after I had that, and you know, after for 3 years they were calling my number. So when I was delivered by the American soldiers, and when they called my name, I was delivered fast. And then my friend Piri, she spoke to me. She says, "Piri, it's you. Just say yes, it's me. It's Piri Gross. You know, not 20,444."
Piri, I know that if Auschwitz wasn't enough, you ended up being transported later to Dachau and another camp. At one time, you were put on a train, and en route, it stopped. What happened when the train stopped?
The train stopped from Dachau. What happened?
Well, when we came to Dachau, they were just, and everybody was shoved out of the train. And they were just saying, you know, you go this way.
No, that was an Auschwitz. I think what you're saying is that in Dachau, when people already knew that they were going to be killed pretty much. It was like the end of the line. She'd been in Auschwitz, she was in Geislingen, she was already in Dachau, and they were being taken to a killing field. And so all of a sudden, then the Americans were shooting at the train.
Oh, yes, yes, yes. They were shooting the train. They didn't know that we were all Holocaust survivors. They thought that they were German, soldiers. So when they kept shooting, and then finally when the train stopped, when they opened the cattle train, when they saw a lot of people, crying and shouldn't help and all that, they were just beside themselves. They couldn't believe it. They thought that they were, stopping German soldiers. So then when we got up, we were kissing their feet and thanking them for, liberating us. Yeah, bless them all.
Yes. So Piri, we have Lieutenant Colonel Sam Sachs with us this evening, who is an American liberator. What would you like to share with him?
I'd like to say to Colonel Sam.
Oh, the one who lived with the camp. God bless you, and you should live to be 120 like Moses, in good health, happiness, and prosperity, and everything the best, and may all your wishes and dreams come true for liberating us at the camp. God bless you.
God bless you, Sam.
I just
One last
say, Sam, that my dad was also in the 3rd Army. He was in the 5th Infantry, Battle of the Bulge, on the beaches of Normandy. And I just want to say, God bless you. God bless all of our military for your indomitable will and everything you did to save this world from socialism, from Nazism, from communism, everything all together, to give us the freedoms that we have. And we just say, God bless you, especially, I'm sure Mom, today is the 72nd birthday of Israel. And I never thought, I'm sure Mom never thought that she would live with all the survivors to see the state of Israel celebrating 72 years, and how proud we are, of you and all of our military, and President Trump, who's been the best president for Israel and for Americans. And just thank you so much. My mom has 8 grandchildren, 4 daughters, thanks to you and all your heroic efforts.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. One last question for you, Piri. What does freedom mean to you after everything that you've been through? Can you tell us what freedom in this country means to you?
Oh my God. Freedom means everything in the world. People are very lucky. They don't know what freedom is. When you got to be constantly under a gun and constantly when to sit and when to stand and all that, that to be free is heaven. It's just wonderful to be free. And God bless all the soldiers that liberated Dachau. God bless them all. And remember, we kissed their feet, and they were scared of us, and we were kissing their feet because we were all in striped clothes and bald hair, and they were scared of us. We, kissing their feet.
Thank you so much, Piri. It's so great to see you. God bless you, and thank you for sharing those very difficult stories with us. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And now we're going to move on to Joe Alexander.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Piri. Good evening, Joe.
Good evening.
Good evening. Welcome, and thank you so much for joining us tonight. My first question for you is one that I asked another survivor, and that is to share with us how life changed for you at the beginning of the war. And I know that there were events that happened that related to the last time you actually saw your parents. And I know this is difficult, but can you share some of that with us?
Yes. When the war started, the Germans came into town, and we lived in the square where all the business were. And after a couple of weeks, they came in and they went around the square. And for some reason, we'll never know, that we were the second house in one corner. And they went after, in the 3rd house was an uncle of mine. They went after the uncle and went around the square and told the people they have 10 minutes to get out in the square, and they took them away. Like I say, for some reason, I don't know why, they left those 3 houses where we were the second one. A rumor started that they're going to come back 3 days later and take the rest of us. So my dad said, well, we're not going to wait for them to come and give us 10 minutes. So I went out, he got a wagon, anyway, we picked up the store and everything. We had a very good life. And I had 2 parents, and I had 3 sisters and 2 brothers. And we moved to a town before Warsaw, because Poland was divided in 2 parts. One half was annexed to the Third Reich, where we lived, and the second part was Poland under German occupation. So my dad had 3 sisters living about 25 kilometers before Warsaw, a town named Blonia. And so we moved there. And after being there for a while, then after a short time, I went to my first camp. It was 1939. I went to a work camp where we worked during the week. On the weekend, you could go home. And we worked building a canal. And it was late in October. And I was staying in the water up to the knee, and I was getting blood poisoning on my arms, on my legs. And so one weekend I went home and I said, I'm not going back. So Monday the police came to look for me. My dad said, he is supposed to be in the camp. He's not here. So I was hiding out for a few weeks. And that was the time when they were building the walls for the Warsaw Ghetto, where the ghetto was going to be in Warsaw. So after they got through building the wall, we all have to move into the ghetto. So we moved into the ghetto, and the wife was miserable, terrible. So I lived, my parents, my sisters and brother, we lived in the ghetto for over 4 months, and we decided back home, nothing changed. So my parents decided for an older sister and a younger brother and I, we should go back home. So we got out of the ghetto. We had to pay off the guards to get out. And anyway, we went back home. Came home, everything was the same as we left. But it only lasted 3 days. After being free for 3 days, they came out an order that for the men from 16 to 60 report to the schoolhouse. So I had to report, and off I went to the camps again. So going to the camps, I was going to camps where was a city of Poznan. And there were a lot of camps around the city, in the city and around the city. So after being there for about working in 7 camps, 7 different camps, train arrived, and we got on the train, riding around the train for 3 days, no water, no food, no nothing, to a destination actually where it takes about 5-6 hours. But we were riding around for 3 days, and we arrived in Auschwitz. We arrived in Auschwitz, and when I came to Auschwitz, the train stopped downtown the city of Auschwitz. Later on, they built the trains to go straight into the camp. So we arrived there and got off the train, whoever could get off. About 30-40% of the people were already dead on the train. When we got whoever can get off, we were lined up in rows of 5, and I met Dr. Mengele. So Dr. Mengele said, there's 5 kilometers to walk to the camp. So I was going to select people to go to the left, and the people on the left are going to be taken on trucks. And he goes through, and he picks me to go to the left. And I came over to the left, and I look around, old people, sick people, young kids. And if when I came from home, I would know the difference, but I was in 7 camps already. And I always try to go to work with the biggest, strongest men. And here I look around and see these people. I said, this is not the kind of people I like to be with. But sometimes, you know, you have to be beside your thinking, you have to have a little luck too. It was after midnight. If it would have been daytime, I don't think I could have done it. So after Mengele moved further down, I ran back to the other side. Ran back to the other side, and we went to Auschwitz. Came to Auschwitz, got a shower, and then I got a number. You can see here, tattoo. After I got this tattoo, we went to Birkenau. So the next morning, we found out the people on the left taken on trucks went straight to the crematorium. So I went to Birkenau. I was in Birkenau for a while, for quite some time actually, and several times I wanted to get out because they weren't bringing people in and they were taking people out to the guest chamber. They kept picking people. Dr. Mengele, I saw him 2 more times in Auschwitz, in Birkenau. And then one time they said they need tailors. So my whole family, my grandfather and father were tailors. So I report and come in front of me and they said, you go back. We have enough. We don't need any more. And that was the time, April of 1942, when the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising was. So after a short time, they said they need a big transport, but they didn't want to take any people from Poland. They only wanted people from Hungary, Greece, any other country. But at the end, they were short about 300 people. They said, now we'll take the people from Poland. So I report and get on the train, the same thing where I were riding around for 3 days again, with no food, no water, no facility. Finally, I arrived. I'm back in the Warsaw Ghetto for the second time. So I came to the Warsaw Ghetto. There was no buildings left, just remaining walls, just walls. Burned, all the buildings were burned. There was no camp. They gave us some prefabs to put together some barracks, and there was no facilities, no nothing. Later on, we built a camp. We got some showers. So on Sunday, he went to get a shower, and he got some fresh clothes. In the meantime, the typhus broke out. Whoever reported to the hospital, nobody came out. I got the typhus is when you get high temperature, high fever. And actually the work we came to do was to take down all those remaining walls brick by brick, and we clean them up and put them up in stacks of 8, 10 feet high. And when I got the temperature, the fever for the typhus, I was sitting behind a stack of those bricks for about 3 days, because I was lucky I had a couple who was a prisoner also, but he was a German man who used to live in Poland. We call it a Volksdeutsch. And he was very good, so I didn't care. So I was sitting about 3 days behind those bricks until I got over the temperature. And after a short time, the Polish underground attacked our camp, and they're trying to free us. But they were unsuccessful. So the next morning, they took us out, and we had to jog to get out of the city because they were afraid we may get attacked by the underground in the city. So had to jog to get out. So we got out late in the afternoon. We came to a field where the farmers grazed their cows. So they put us up on that field, and the ground is very moist. So whatever means you had to dig up a knife, a spoon, anything, you dig up some mud, and you took the bottom of the shirt to squeeze the mud to get a little water. So we got a little water, stayed there overnight. The next morning, we're on the march. So we come to the next city. There was a river. So they let us go to the river to get some water. So 2 of our people went a little further into the river. They thought maybe they would escape, get out on the other side. They got killed, shot in the river.
Joe,
Yeah.
can you hear me?
Yes.
I'm sorry to interrupt. We're running a little short of time, and I have a very important question to ask you.
Okay.
Can you share with us I know you were liberated as well by the Americans. Can you share with us anything you would like to say about that event and what you would like to share with Lieutenant Colonel Sam Sachs?
Yes, I was liberated by the American troops out of Dachau, because from Warsaw I went to Dachau. I was in sub-camps around Dachau, and then on the end of April 1945, we all had to go back to Dachau, and the next morning we went on a death march. And I was on the road, and that's when I was liberated by the American troops.
Wow, wow. I'm gonna have Sam jump in for just a second here. Sam, do you hear me? We need to get Sam unmuted there. Sam, is there anything you would like to share with the survivors after hearing what they've said?
Well, what can I say? I mean, it's a horrific story that they tell of the suffering of people, and I don't know what to say. I was in the troops, and I did my job to whatever extent was required of me, and we were happy to be part of the liberation of Europe and these poor souls who were caught in the mesh. And I would like to say this, though, about the German people. I would say that the majority of the German people were behind Hitler 100%. I felt that I saw the hatred in their eyes. When we liberated this concentration camp, we had the people of this little town in Germany take the bodies, and we had them dig a slit trench down the center of the road of the town, on the road in the center, and they had to bury the bodies. Unfortunately, most of the people who did this carrying were women. There were no more men around. They were either captured or killed, and the remaining, we knew the war was over with practically, but Hitler kept on regardless. And what was left were men in their 60s and young children in their teens. And we did, I'll tell you, they paid a terrible price, because I saw cities bombed. They had no military significance, but they were bombed. The rubble was lying in the streets. The Germans wanted to clean up the rubble. We said, no, we want you to see what you have done to other cities of Europe. You do some of the struggling of what other people, the misery you caused. And I would like to make one comment. Those trains that led into the concentration camps, we could have bombed those tracks so those trains could not run into the concentration camps. But very little was in the U.S. papers at that time. Well, I was not in the United States then, but I know that there was little said. We wanted nothing to do with what was going on in Europe. We said we were separated by the Atlantic Ocean, which was 3,000 miles. And of course, we had the war in the Pacific, which was another 3,000 miles on the other side, because we had a terrible experience from World War I, and we didn't want to get involved with another war in Europe, which many people felt was none of our business, but eventually it came to be our business. And what can I say? I'm glad that these people survived, and we did our share in helping them survive. And I know in France, if I can say on a personal note, I was given an honor being a French Legion of Honor for my services in France to help the French gain their freedom, not only France, but the other countries of Europe. And we did our share. We helped all that we could.
God bless you, Sam. You're amazing. I want to say thanks to you, and all the survivors. You're all incredible, and I just feel bad that we don't have more time to listen to all of you and your amazing stories. And hopefully, God willing, we'll be back here next year and we can all share some more. I'm going to throw it back to Howard here to continue. Thank you all so very much for sharing these testimonies with us.
Lechi lach to a land that I will show you. Lech lecha to a place you do not know. Lechi lach on your journey I will bless you, and you shall be a blessing. You shall be a blessing. Lechi lach.
You should all be a blessing. Amen. And now I'd like to have the president of Cypress College, Dr. Joanna Schilling, share a few words with us.
Oh, thank you, Cliff. And thank you, Dr. Eisenbach, Ms. Schweitz, Ms. Katz, Mr. Alexander, Lieutenant Colonel Sachs. It has been such an honor to have you with us this evening. And, you know, I'm always a little bit speechless after this because it's just such a moving evening. And I'm so grateful to Cliff and Howard and David and Mark for ensuring that we gathered together tonight. We weren't sure if we could go forward since we weren't going to be together in the same place, but I am so grateful that we did, that we were able to hear your stories tonight. Cypress is honored to host this event each year, and it's a little strange to be sitting in our kitchens and our living rooms and our studies instead of being together, but it has not diminished the power of this evening, not one bit. Your stories are inspiring, deeply hopeful, and I'm filled with gratitude for the freedoms we continue to have in this country. In sharing these truths with us, you continue to honor those who lost their lives, while also reminding us that we must never become complacent about the freedoms that we cherish. This year is the 75th anniversary of the liberation of the death camps. And this June, based in no small part by the stories I've heard each year from our survivors, my husband and I had intended to travel to Auschwitz and Birkenau. Unfortunately, our trip will be delayed this year, but not forever. And if, as so many of you have noted, this history is fading from our memory because we have allowed it to slip from our educational curriculums, then it is up to each of us to listen and learn, to bear witness, and to embrace what is resurrected in living color by the stories you've heard tonight. They're shown in the beauty of Cliff Lester's photographs, and by the refusal of each of our guests here tonight to allow the truth of the Holocaust to fade away. We must all continue to be fierce and outspoken voices against the power of hate, wherever it may reside. This is our commitment to you, Dr. Eisenbach, Ms. Katz, Ms. Schweitz, Mr. Alexander, and that for as long as Cypress College is here, we will share your story, and you will be here with us. And to our community and students here with us tonight, we promise you that the stories you have heard this evening will never die. These are difficult times for many. Our world feels much more dangerous, and most of us have never had to endure anything but the prosperity and safety and hope for the future that we often take for granted. And so we look to history both to remind us of that although humanity is capable of unimaginable cruelty, we are also capable of deep love, compassion, and courage. Nowhere does this shine more brightly than tonight in the faces of our guests, in the words of their heroism and courage, and from each of you who also embrace the best that mankind has to offer. We must never forget the cruelty or the courage, for to forget is to allow this to happen again. In the words of General Dwight D. Eisenhower to his troops when they took part in the liberation of the camps, Get it all on record now. Get the films, get the witnesses, because somewhere down the road of history, some bastard will get up and say this never happened. We must never forget. In order to continue our support of Holocaust education, we thank those of you who donated tonight. And if there are others who do wish to donate to our Holocaust Education Fund, you may do so at any time on our foundation website. 100% of your donation will go towards ensuring that our young people continue to learn about the Holocaust and to understand the importance of keeping this history alive so it will never be repeated. We thank you for being here tonight, for your support and your generosity. Thank you to our guests. We are so honored to have you here. And now I'll ask Cliff Lester back. Cliff?
Thank you, Dr. Schilling. Thank you so much for those amazing words. At this time, we're going to light candles to remember those who we lost. Elie Wiesel, a Holocaust survivor, said, "We should never forget." Tonight, we light candles to honor the memories of the 6 million Jews who were so brutally taken from this world. And in addition, we light a 7th candle for all those who were persecuted during this horrible time in our history. When the souls of our loved ones depart from the world, a dark void is left. And as it said in Proverbs, the human soul is the lamp of God. Tonight, we kindle these candles to represent bringing the divine light of these souls into our world. May their memory always be a blessing. Howard, do we have Rabbi Levy with us?
Can you hear me?
I can't hear you, Rabbi.
You don't hear anything?
I hear you, but you're quiet. You have to a little louder. Yes, that's good.
על כנפי השכינה במלויס כדאי שימות ההירים בזויר הרקיע מזהירים אז כל הנשמות של 6 מיליון היהודים שניסו על קידוש השם בעבור שנותבו ביד אזכור אז נשמו יסיים בגן עדן די מנוחסם לא חן ולא רחמים יסתירם בסייזר כנפיו לעולמים ויצרוי בסוי לחיים אס נשמו יסיים השם מונח על עושם וינוח על משכבם בשוליים ונוי מרומים.
Thank you so much, Rabbi. Thank you. At this time, I'd like to say special thanks once again to Sarah, to Joe Alexander, to Dr. Eisenbach, to Piri Katz, and to Lieutenant Colonel Sam Sachs. You have blessed us all this evening with your presence, your stories, and your words of hope. From you, we learn about gratitude and how blessed we are for our freedom. Thanks to our military women and men, like Colonel Sam Sachs, who risked so much on our behalf. We are forever indebted. My thanks go also to Howard Kummerman, the Executive Director of the Cypress College Foundation, for his encouragement to go ahead with this event despite the many challenges of virtual broadcasting. And I have to depart from my notes a little bit as I say thank you to Dr. Schilling for your words, Dr. Schilling. You really brought tears to my eyes as you spoke about ensuring that the message of the survivors will always be with us at Cypress College. I'm staring right now off to the side of my screen at a photograph I have of my mom and her brother. And I know that she's with us right now, and so touched and blessed and proud of us all for what we're doing at Cypress College to keep the memory of the survivors alive. And I just can't thank you enough for your support. My thanks to Mark Posner for his inspiration, David Halachmi for your beautiful message tonight. My thanks to Jordana Gessler at the LA Museum of the Holocaust for her support in the background through this and collaborating with us to make this event happen. And thank you, Rabbi Levy, once again for the beautiful chanting of your prayer. Finally, thank you all for listening, to serve as witnesses to the testimonies that you've heard, and to keep the memory of the Holocaust alive. Together, we ensure that the light that emanates from those who have come before us will shine brighter into the future. God bless you all. Finally, I want to give my thanks to the beautiful music you've heard from singer-songwriter Aviela Winder, who sang for us this evening. She's an active volunteer and ambassador for the Soldier Angels organization and also a part of Operation Welcome Home. Her passion comes from her heart, a yearning to help others and to create awareness for the world to come together as one. Much like her passion for music, her love for people, and her zest for life, she also holds her faith, beliefs, and sense of community strong in her heart. She has been honored to be a part of this Yom HaShoah event, to continue to bring messages of hope, love, and peace for all. And we are honored to have had her with us. And now this evening we will conclude with the singing of Hatikva, Israel's national anthem. The title means the hope. And as Dr. Eisenbach shared so eloquently, we hope for a better tomorrow. Together, we bring light into this world. God bless you all.
Kolot balevav penimat nefesh Yehudi homiyad ufate mizrach kadimat ayin lezion sofiyad olav tikvatenu Hatikva shנות הבאים להיותם חופשי בארצנו ארץ ציון וירושלים להיותם חופשי בארצנו ארץ ציון וירושלים